What's up, everyone? NanMan here, and we are back with some more modern gameplay. This time around, we're going to be seeing Hardened Scales versus Mono Black Scam. Mono Black Scam, it's like the closest way that I can describe this one. This deck is much more like a much more like a 8-rack updated version of the list. It's very cool if you're into, the discard effects, if you're into being able to disrupt your opponent and then, burn them out a little bit. So it's not as, it's not like the, I don't know. It's not like the Necro style of just like I'm running Soul Spikes and I'm doing this sort of Mono Black Scam version of it, but it's, I don't know. It's the best way I could describe it. It's 8-rack without being 8-rack. It doesn't have all 8 of the racks in here, so I did the closest description we could do it for it. But Hardened Scales, we've seen it a couple of times on the channel, so it's been a while, and there's a nice little Bowmaster in response to get rid of the Zabaz here to help with that modular and manipulation of counters there, so a really good response to the Arcbound coming out here. Now, for anybody that's hanging out and watching, we are getting ready for SCG Baltimore. So I will be at Baltimore over the weekend. So if you're there, say hi. Let's get some games in. I'll be playing Modern as well as One Piece, since there is, of course, One Piece event. The first one that SCG is doing. I wanted to go and play that. Also going to play Modern and, jam some Commander games with some friends. So overall, just have a good time at these events. I always like to go to the SCG events on the East Coast if they're within a decent enough distance there. But we do see, of course, Liliana came out, was able to do some sacrificing. Now we got some Zabaz coming out here. Ancient Stirrings. Let's try to refill. We know that there's going to be an uptick on Liliana, forcing us to discard a card. So if we can kind of set up our hand a little bit more and prepare for that, we'll be in a better position here. Yeah, Arcbound goes to hand. Do some green mana. Beseiju popping Urza Saga, which is really nice because this deck does rely both on being able to get things like the rack. We also see the Shadow Spear, but also does very well about just taking a turn and saying, yeah, I'll make a construct. That's a threat. It closed out the game. We can rely on that. We'll see if that is going to be the case for either player in this match here. All right, so there's the uptick. We'll discard another Stirrings. There's another Urza Saga. That'll work out pretty well for it. So we're in this, like, the Mono Black Scam runs Grief. It runs the, Not Dead After All. It runs the Liliana. So it is kind of like this hybrid package of, like, a Scam package and an 8-rack package put together. But we do see a replay of Lily, forcing another uptick. So our goal is to shred and disrupt our opponent's hand enough, have an Urza Saga find us the rack or play the rack and just start slicing and dicing their life total down. We'll see how well the Hardened Scales player is going to start responding to things. We do see, of course, Construct get made. We'll start buffing it up and start putting the clock and pressure on our opponent now. And this is a great little find here. We get, of course, Pithing Needle to shut down Liliana. I always like being able to have these utility 1-mana artifacts if I'm running Urza Saga. Whether you're doing it in the main board or the sideboard, it's nice. Pithing Needle, of course, is one of those great utility ones where you can just start shutting things down. Works great in today's meta with people playing the One Ring, things like that. So, and it's just Urza Sagas all the time for both these players. So Hellbent, no cards in hand, leaving the Zabaz back right now to push for damage, or not to push for damage, but to block. But there's another. So yeah, both these players are just like, hey, what if we both just sat here and got Urza Sagas?
All
right, making a construct looks like here to kind of start building up. Artifact count is only 2 with the construct there. On the other side, of course, for our Hardened Scales player, she's sitting there with 4 artifacts. So both these players sitting here building up right now. We're in this kind of stalemate arms race of them trying to build up to stuff. But now we get to see some little upticks on the Urza Sagas. They're about to pop and expire. So now it's the decision making. Are we going to be making another construct here, or is the card in our hand impactful, knowing that Liliana is there that could be upticking and causing problems? So I mean, the whole thing about it is, like, you have the other one that's going to be at 2, so floating the mana off the one that's about to expire makes sense. It gives you a little bit more options to just play out what you have in your hand instead of just having it be discarded. Well, it can't be discarded off Lily, but right, Pithing Needle's shutting that down. But you're in this interesting spot now where you're like, okay, I know I'm getting Shadow Spear off of the search. I've already got Pithing Needle. I mean, you don't know for sure, because that's the thing about Hardened Scales. You have other 1 mana creatures that you could be able to get. You could get a secondary Zabaz and have them, see each other and blow up and do things like that and start manipulating counters. I don't see that as a necessary line at this moment in time, but it is one that you could be able to get. I guess you could get the Ozolith as another kind of 1 mana options, but Shadow Spear helping, adding more pressure onto our opponent is kind of where we want to be. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a 5/5. Gets +1 off Shadow Spear. Becomes a 6.
That's 3, 4, 5. Okay.
Everyone's just checking. Okay, and how many? What power is it at? Where are we at? There's 6 coming at you. Boom, boom, boom. Let's do a little life swap in here. All right, now we are on the other side where our Mono Black Scam players. Yep, she just goes, yeah, we're gonna make a dude, no problem. We'll both sit here and just build up this army of constructs now.
I'm sorry. You should probably search before you do that. No.
Hardened Scales player says you probably should search before you sit there and manipulating dice, because it's gonna go up anyway as soon as you find something. Yeah. So it's like, I still feel like just finding the rack here, knowing that, yes, there is the lifelink off of the Shadow Spear, and it's going to mess with things, but, like, just keeping extra damage, especially if we're gummed up the board too much where both of us are kind of just in this blocky stage and swinging for lifelinky damage and trying to keep each other kind of set and stuck. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so there is the rack. That's the choice here. I don't know. Maybe we should just call it, like, Rack Scam. I don't know. I'd have to ask her if there is a specific name that she prefers for the deck, because to me it's kind of like a Mono Black Scam, because you run the scam package in there with Grief and Not Dead After All, and it's not all of the racks in there. I mean, it runs the rack because Urza Saga is great for finding it, but all right, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4 artifacts. And then Shadow Spear, of course, giving it that +1. So that's why that dice is indicating 5 power overall, while the other constructs have a power of 4. So if you're looking at the dice and going, why is it different like that? Well, the Shadow Spear, of course, also gives +1/+1. All right, making more dudes. What are we doing here? Floating mana. Making some Ozolith or Zabaz here. Oh, okay. That's also an option here, is going with the Welding Jar to help kind of protect in case something's going to get destroyed. This is really nice. The Haywire Might, so we can be able to Get rid of Urza Saga. We can get rid of Shadow Spear. Get rid of the rack. Like, there's a lot of good targets for this. I like, personally, going for the Shadow Spear, but I can understand the reasoning for getting rid of Urza Saga as well. You could even go for the rack here, but I feel like... Oop, I feel like kicking my water bottle there, but no. I feel like the Shadow Spear stalemates that we have, things get weird the longer that stays around, right? But we'll see. We'll see what's the choice here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, exile. I'm gonna return a Urza Saga to my graveyard, and we're gonna exile our cards.
All right, we're going to do a little swap. Switching gears, get this Urza Saga back.
Then I'm gonna move combat. Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a 4, 5. Yep.
Take 6, get 13.
And then we do another big swing.
And you get a 20.
Yep. And I'll pass turn.
Okay, draw. Saga will trigger. I will.
All right, another construct coming out.
Search good.
The wall is getting larger. All right, what's the choice here now then? How many other 1 mana or 0 mana artifacts does this list run? I mean, you just get another the rack, I guess. I don't know how many racks she's running in her list. Well, we'll see. Pithing Needle. Name Haywire Mite.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
All right. Artifact count has increased.
Combat. 7.
He says, "Let's just bring the team. Let's go."
Math, yes. 14.
I don't.
14. Okay.
Interesting. All right, 14 coming across here.
6.
Like, you know, probably the biggest thing might get eaten
Take
or get.
8. Okay, so I go down to 12, you up to 20, and target construct.
target is good.
All right, let's do the modular trigger moving across.
And you'll take 8.
Taking 8. We're probably taking more than that, right? Because doesn't Shadow Spear give trample as well? Pretty sure it does.
Urza Saga.
Should have named Saga. I'm fucking idiot. Oh, you take 1 on your keep.
And then the rack starts dealing extra damage. Urza Saga's there now, so we can maybe survive to start getting more value off of it. Be able to, I don't know, 3 turns. I don't know if we're going to be able to survive 3 turns for us to start shooting or going and searching for stuff, or being able to start making more constructs and stuff. Let's see. Tapping 3. Oh, now that's a new one here. So we're starting to see some players run these MDFCs, Bridgeworks Battle, one of them from Modern Horizons 3, giving a creature +2/+2 until end of turn, and it fights up to 1 creature you don't control. So each deals damage through its power to the other, which
7, so this is going to be a 9.
I'll respond.
Okay.
it says here this will be a 9/9. And we're saying, okay, what are you targeting with this?
Yeah, I think that's the correct play. I'll not dead after all target Bowmasters.
Okay.
Sacrifice Bowmasters to Flare of Malice.
Oh,
Trigger on that.
okay. So we do not dead after all
So you're
onto the Bowmasters,
So you
and then Flare of Malice in response.
going to 13.
So it'll die, it'll come back, we can shoot, we can make this bigger.
Okay, so it's got 1 damage marked on it.
There's 1 damage marked on the
and
construct.
so we'll have 7 damage marked on it.
Okay, so I'll have 7 damage marked on it.
So 2 remaining.
All right. She'll gain 9 life off of that fight. It now has 7 damage marked on it, though, so it's like, hey,
7 damage marked on it. 1, 2, so it's a 9/9 with 7 damage. So if it takes 2.
9/9, but it gets smaller, though,
Okay.
right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Seven again.
Yep.
Now it's smaller, even more. Oh, and there's a fatal push.
Yeah, that's fine.
Clear the path. All right. Man, that's the thing. Hardened Scales is a very cool deck, and it's very explosive, pure style deck within Modern. But there are points where you have to fight through so much hate and so much disruption and removal that it can be one of those feel-bad decks to pilot. Now, it takes a very skilled player to go through the lines and be able to, math it out and manipulate the counters and find the specific lines to kind of have those explosive turns. In this case, things just sort of, our advantage meter just kept going more and more over towards our Mono Black Scam player. The longer the game went on, the more constructs kept getting made. Liliana had a couple good turns of being able to force our opponents to sacrifice stuff, to discard stuff. So we've been seeing quite a lot of power there. And that was the first game there in favor of our Mono Black player. Both players did very well trying to navigate some weird situations and trying to piece together stuff. You see our Hardened Scales players like, well, I've got a lot of stuff that I can try to utilize in this matchup, and starts pulling a bunch of those aside here. So now we're going into game number 2. Looking for hopefully a nice powerful start here. Inkmoth Nexus into the pass. Now we have to be careful of not having a turn 1 play, because things like this will happen where a Thoughtseize or Grief or something's going to hit, and we might end up losing some stuff here. So we've got Walking Ballista, Patchwork Automaton, and picking the Patchwork Automaton. I like that because it does, of course, have access to that kind of ward ability, but the Dismember was the other card that was in hand there.
I'll play Saga. Tap to cast a.
All right, there's the Urza Saga and a Walking Ballista on 1. Playing a Walking Ballista early is great, especially when you've got the Arcbound, because you want to position it that when you play your Arcbound Ravager, you have the ability to start sacrificing and manipulating things, and you don't want people to respond and do stuff. Also, if a Walking Ballista dies early on, you can be able to sit here and hopefully get Agatha's Soul Cauldron or something like that to be able to utilize. But we see there's the Grief, there's the Not Dead After All. We'll strip the last 2 playable cards out of your hand, and you're left with a Walking Ballista. I like the art for the Grief. Have you all seen even these extended guest arts like this don't do them justice? Look up the actual art of the Evoke creatures, like the full art version of them. They look so good. All right, there's a Dauthi Voidwalker coming out, and we do see Walking Ballista pushing for damage here. Just a little pokesies. Phyrexian Tower on the side of our Scam player. And there's 7 damage coming across.
2 cards in hand.
Oh, do we have a rat? Yeah. So we can, we've already got a big push. So we've got, of course, Grief does have Menace, so you need 2 creatures to block it. Dauthi Voidwalker, of course, has Shadow, so it can't be blocked unless the creature has Shadow. And how many people are running a Dauthi Mirror? Not very many. So Dauthi is a very powerful card in Modern. And sometimes it just kind of hoses certain decks, like if you're like, well, I'm a graveyard deck, and it goes, well, that's cute. Imagine not being able to use your graveyard. So we haven't really talked about land. Well, most of the time when we're doing the casting, we haven't really talked about lands. But the land that we're seeing here, this entertainment district that looks like there, is that kind of... oh, okay, hold on. We get some manipulation here. Turn this into a creature, blow it up to make it into 2 black mana off the Phyrexian Tower to cast a secondary Dauthi Voidwalker. We've also got the rack. Now we're Hellbent, set up in a good position to really close out the game here. So we have a construct. Are we making another construct here? Like, we're in this weird position, right, where it's like, you know, our opponent is hell-bent, so let's do these things. Here's this searching. It gets sacrificed. It goes under Doth. It doesn't really matter in that regard. But Shadow Spear, we need some lifelink here to kind of help us out.
I don't like that card. Pretty good.
Play Forest.
All right, there's a drum and a walking ballista. So using that colorless floating, we're going to do that. We're going to make a 2-mana equip.
2 mana.
2-mana secondary walking ballista. Now we're both hellbent.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is a 6/6.
It's a 6/6 construct here, ready to go. The double walking ballista is nice. We can do some blocks now. We can start shooting things. Still got to be dealing with quite a lot of damage, though. The lifelink swing is huge here, because otherwise, like, we were essentially going to be in a lot of trouble with 9 damage or 10 damage coming across with all of these Dothy Void Markers. So now it's this weird, like, position where you go, okay, I have to push for damage, right? Because we want to try to close out the game. We have these evasive creatures. We want to utilize them. How are we going to do that? Are we going to push with the Grief and one of our Dothys, save our other Dothy here? We know that there's 3 damage coming across from the rack.
Swing out.
Ah, we're doing the swing out with everybody.
6, that's 10.
That's 10 plus 3 more is 13, essentially. So you'll take the 10. She'll drop to 8. Take 3 on her upkeep because she's got no cards in her hand from the rack.
Alright, pass turn on your keep, go to 5.
Boom, boom, boom.
That's good helping.
Okay, that's a really nice one to be able to get here. Okay, we know that we're pushing for damage. We have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a 6/6. Essentially a 7/7. We can animate Inkmoth Nexus, having another artifact on the field to be able to kind of help us out. Otherwise, we could just kind of have to sit here and math it out. I still feel like we want to keep our walking ballistas back here. Gaining 7 is nice, but when our opponent's swinging for 10, like, if we take 13 every time, we can't close out the game without... we can't close out the game. If we don't swing and we keep it back on defense, it's a play, but it's a risky play when our opponent has access to removal things like fatal pushes and stuff like that. So while you have the ability to push for damage, gain lifelink stuff, uncontested here, while our opponent is tapped out and hellbent, then that's what you should be looking for, is those lines to be able to find those opportunities to kind of gain life, deal damage, set yourself up for hopefully staying alive, because now you have the double walking ballista. You could block Grief here. And, all right, I'll double block Grief, and I'll remove these 2 counters to shoot a Dothy and really, like, crack this stalemate open. We see a fetch, going to get a swamp here. Untap, upkeep, draw.
10. I think I have it.
Okay, so we've seen this line, we've talked through this, is if you push, yeah, right, so you're like, you need to keep something back, because if you don't, right, yeah, so, okay, she's going through it right now, she's talking about, okay, you double block here, this is set up like this. I still feel like you can't push with your Dothys. It's risky to do so. You could, but it's too risky because, I guess you could only push with your Dothys. Your Grief stays alive here. like the grief is not dying from walking ballista. All right, the not like grief is a 3/2, but the roll, does the roll give it +1? Wicked roll token. What is it? Yeah, enchanted creature gets +1/+1 when it's put to the graveyard. Each opponent loses 1 life. Oh, we're doing the swing out. Okay, so here's the danger of doing the swing out here.
Activate.
We're gonna activate this walking ballista to put an extra counter on it.
You have second rack, you win here.
Yeah, so she's piecing together. If you have the second rack, you just win. Let's do this block here. We'll do 1 here. We'll do that again and get rid of that one.
Right, so. Yep. And I'll take 3.
Yep.
I got to 9.
Yeah, I thought that again.
Yeah. Were you counting on the wicked?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's
Okay.
Sure, I was gonna murk my own.
She was like, all right, well, I think your math counted on the wicked roll and that dying, and I was not going to let that happen. So, yeah, I think that was a weird, like, I don't know. We can go back and forth, and that's a really interesting spot that if you're trying to practice and study and learn, take a screenshot of that section and just be like, okay, how do we position ourselves, assuming we're both hellbent and the card that's in our hand is irrelevant, how do we put us in the best position to close out the game, but still buy us an extra turn to do that? And it's dangerous. I still feel like,
Exile Voidwalker.
I don't know, pushing damage makes sense. But, oh, all right, we got a grief to start things off here. Said, oh, August the Soul Cauldron, Zabaz, Ancient Stirrings. I like getting rid of that August the Soul Cauldron. Let's just get that annoying, pesky, powerful card out of the way. Says, hey, doesn't really matter. I'm going to be able to get rid of these 2 pieces because I've got a Not Dead after all. And we'll just strip your 2 best cards that are in your hand. Everyone's favorite, right? We love how good grief is. And there's a Shadow Spear to follow it up here. So we do have options as our Hardened Scales player, right? The Zabaz is coming out. We've got, of course, got the modular. There is a Beseiju to get rid of the Urza Saga or the Shadow Spear. I mean, popping the Urza Saga now prevents our opponent from being able to have access to constructs and things like that. The grief pushing for 4 damage every turn is going to be scary. Especially once they have a Shadow Spear, they'll be pushing for 5 menace damage, essentially unblockable. So we can sit here and see what our opponent does, wait to respond. We've got, of course, 2 mana available to us to do that. A second Urza Saga. So us popping the Urza Saga isn't as impactful as like the Shadow Spear, but no activation, no equipment of the Shadow Spear. We're saving that. That's kind of the giving us the information. Oh, you're just going to make a construct.
I do like to think that we prove Waffle House guy wrong because we are both prime examples of why one machine hit.
All right, let's tap this for green.
Beseiju Saga.
I don't know if the Beseiju, the Saga here.
Which one?
Right, it's like we'll get the response. Our opponent gets another land and a construct. We knew that they were going to do that anyway. And we still have the unblockable Shadow Spear that we got to deal with. I mean, unless the goal is we're going to start setting up and know that we're going to get a lot more creatures on the ground to start blocking that. And Patchwork Automaton does a lot of the heavy lifting in that regard.
I will tap 1 like this. I'm gonna cast Zabaz.
Ah, all right. We got some triggers. Double Zabaz. Spider-Man meme as they stare at each other, but we do get the modular trigger because if a modular trigger would be put on 1 or more creatures, put an additional one. So because there's 2 Zabaz out, that says, hey, you're Zabaz, I'm Zabaz. Let's put an extra counter on me, and then you can sacrifice and give me that last counter that you were holding on to. Hellbent. Hardened Scales player is Hellbent. So any discard-related effects Thought Seizes, Inquisitions, Griefs aren't going to be as effective here. But yeah, look at this, just kind of past turn. Again, just giving us that complete read of your goal is to just make more constructs here. The other line, you could click the Shadow Spear and push for damage, get some big swings and life gain there, but basically utilizing the Urza Saga as a threat and actively using it as much as possible is definitely a good line to kind of gum up the board, go wide. Let's create enough problems for you here. And, ooh, Pithing Needle. Do we name Shadow Spear? Do we name Urza Saga? Which is our options here?
They both hurt both of us.
I will say Urza Saga.
Urza Saga makes the most sense
Um,
because we've seen just like, oh, you're basically taking turns off to utilize your Urza Saga, and you will get probably get 2 activations on it. And there we do see an Orcish Bowmaster come out, shoot you for 1.
Upkeep, draw, Saga Trigger, or float a mana.
Saga Trigger floats a mana. Let's go find the rack.
No cards in hand, 1 card in hand.
one card, yeah.
Yeah, look, there we go. Okay, the rack is going to be the choice here. Remember, it does have that impact of
No, I made a construct.
Oh, right, yeah. Lol.
I was just too busy searching.
No, I'm sorry. I forgot about that.
oh yeah, there should have been a construct out. That, of course, happened before the Pithing Needle came out. That's why it's like our Hardened Scales player was like, what did I, where's my mana? What happened to my mana? Didn't I do something with this? Yes. We got all caught up with the searching and finding and doing all these things. So the board is a bit gummed up again. Rack helps with that. When we're sitting here and we've disrupted and we've done all this, we still have the option of just equipping Shadow Spear to Grief
Inquisition of Kozilek you?
and pushing, but it doesn't really work as well. All right, so there's an Inquisition. Another Zabaz coming out here. Could have gotten another Spider-Man meme going, but not this time. That was the 3rd Zabaz.
Play a second rack.
Second rack. That's 6 damage there. And now we've got a real clock going. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, 4/4 construct.
The turn on your upkeep, take 6.
Phew, take 6. Ow. Nothing you can do about that other than just try to hold cards in your hand. So it just completely warps the way that you want to be playing, right? You sit here and you go, okay,
I will go to
keeping cards in hand helps me stay alive, but it slows down my game plan. I need to be able to close out the game, so I need to be able to play my cards. It's a tricky one. Let's push for damage here, though.
Block, block.
Double block? No. Throw them in front of it.
die.
Yep.
Just absorb the hit.
I'll pass turn.
Tap, upkeep, draw, flip, Shadow Spear to con-
There's the equip to the Shadow Spear.
or
I guess the construct, like, you know, that's,
I'm gonna block the construct.
yeah, let's block the construct.
take another 4.
Take 4.
Then you'll die to racks.
Give me a second.
No.
We're checking the math here.
Survive here.
Yeah, so here, like, the evasiveness of Grief is too much here because there's the, hey, I'll push for damage with this for 4, and then you're going to take 6 on, you take 6 there on the upkeep, the double rack trigger. So the rack is crazy in this sort of situations for it, and why it's so good of just like really messing with your opponent, especially if the game goes long. You go, well, you're probably hellbent or close to it. You're especially when you're playing Hardened Scales, so you're trying to dump your hand and play all these things, go for this really powerful pure strategy, kill somebody with one thing. Not really able to work when we're stripping away your cards, and it's very, very hard to deal with the disruptiveness of it. But that was a very fun game. We've got, of course, new games coming out every Monday and Thursday. I'll be at SCG Baltimore, of course, on the coming weekend. So thanks so much for tuning in and watching, everybody, and I'll see you all next game.